Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Jared Haslam, and we will be diving into his company, Kintsugi Institute, emotional wellness and mental fitness for professionals. Jared, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to dive in. I always like to start from the beginning. So, can you take us on a little trip down memory lane to before you started your company? What were you doing at the time? And then what was really the motivation behind starting Kintsugi Institute?
Yeah, that's a great way to start the whole conversation. So I worked in the auto industry for quite a long time. I was almost 18 years in the auto industry, and I had attended meetings where I saw the style of leadership was very challenging in a lot of different arenas and had a massive impact on the way employees showed up and the way teams functioned and the general experience for a lot of people in the industry was challenging to say the least, and it was for me too. And I found myself to be in a position where working up the ranks in the auto industry, where I realized that impact was not just felt by the rank and file employees, but it was felt by leadership. And oftentimes, the resources available to leaders to help them navigate some of the emotional stress that comes with these positions, that there just weren't a lot of resources. So I decided to leave that corporate life and start a venture. Actually, I started this with my spouse, who is a marriage and family therapist, and we decided to combine our expertise. And I understand how the boardroom works. I understand
Yeah.
how the corporate world works, and she understands how humanity works, how humans function. And so our business came about as an intersection of that leadership development, corporate world, and the world of mental health, trying to help leaders recover and be sustainable emotionally in the workplace. That's kind of how we came about, and doing that work to help leaders really take control of their environment and from the foundations of what's all underneath it, what's happening emotionally, what's happening psychologically. And when they recognize that, they can actually make significant changes in how they approach work and how they approach life. It's pretty fantastic.
I love that so much. And what a dynamic duo between you and your spouse. That's awesome. I The role of mental health in the professional world didn't really get solidified in my mind until COVID was the thing that made me realize, okay, this is an important aspect of life, and making sure that you're in the right energy space and that you're in the right headspace mentally, physically, emotionally, all these different things. Let's give the listeners more context into Kintsugi Institute so they really understand holistically what it's all
Sure.
about. Can you?
Sure. Yeah, let me just briefly talk about Tsugi. The name is really it's a Japanese art form. In my automotive career, I spent some time in Japan, and we came across this concept of kintsugi artwork. And basically, the concept is when something breaks, it's really for pottery. When pottery breaks, instead of taking a piece that was really beautiful and saying, "Oh, it's broken, I'm going to throw it away," you patch it together. You bring it back together, and then you take gold and highlight all the cracks, highlight where it was broken. And in the end, you get a piece of pottery that's unique, very unique, but also very beautiful for having been broken. And so that concept of reemerging from the breaks that we have, the challenges that we face, and not try to hide those. We put the corporate face on and we show up to work and saying everything's perfect, we're great. In reality, nobody is, and everyone's got cracks and broken. And when you start to recognize those and celebrate those, then you can become something even more and more beautiful and more celebrated. So that's the whole concept behind Kintsugi. But what we do is we tie that into the individuals working together in either a leadership capacity or in teams to affect the way that they interact with themselves and others, and identify what breaks have happened and how can we help those breaks be healed and be a part of the leadership journey for not only executives but also for professionals and teams. And when we do that, we see people having a much different relationship with themselves and with their teams and with their businesses, and ultimately helps their businesses be more successful. But probably more important, it helps them have a much more peaceful, satisfied life. And they
Yeah.
all play together. That's kind of what we do in the Kintsugi Institute.
100%. I love that. Break down for us, who is your ideal customer? Who do you love to work with in terms of is there specific industries, anything like that? And then also, what are the different offers and services? Is it
Sure.
more one-on-ones, group? Watch me go through that.
Yeah. I like to say that all business problems or challenges are fundamentally human challenges. And when you peel back all of the layers, you're going to find that there is a human element. If it's not the sole cause of the problem, it's
Mhm.
absolutely coloring the problem. And any industry has that challenge. And so we work with all industries. And we don't have a specific focus because humanity is humanity and it works in all businesses. But we like to work with smaller teams. So if there's a team inside of a company that's struggling, that has low engagement scores, or the leader is really not gaining traction with their team, the word is dysfunction. So we like to work with small teams. Executive teams are great because there's a lot of interaction that happens and a lot of unspoken and political and power struggles and that sort of thing that all leads to a significant amount of dysfunction. So we like to work with executive teams and small teams inside of businesses. And then what we'll typically do is our most effective offer really is to do a holistic engagement with the team, which involves not only group dynamics and group education and group training, but also group interactions. We like to go in and observe. So we function at that level. And then we break out with the individuals and work one on one to help them work through whatever's impacting the way that they're showing up at work and the way that's impacting their team. So those two things are really the most prominent things. We will work individually with clients as they come to us, and we can also, as needed, come in and do some educational presentations and information sharing to help leaders recognize the impact of mental health on their business, which prompts them to engage a little bit deeper. So we cover that to those breadths of offerings for our clients.
Got it. Now, let's shift a little bit to the back end of the business. When it comes to attracting new clients and attracting new customers, what does that look like from a lead gen and marketing perspective currently?
Sure. Two prominent channels. Obviously, I'm fairly active and have at one point was fairly active on LinkedIn, and really trying to produce value-added content for clients to shift perspectives on the way mental health is driving their business. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is through where we're currently located, working through industry groups, being engaged with, particularly here, we're in Colorado, and being engaged with air and space here, which is a very prominent industry, and working with those organizations to help them fill the needs for their client, for their membership. Those are the two prominent lead gen sources.
Got it. One thing I always like to touch upon on these podcasts, because I have a lot of coaches, consultants, agency owners that listen to this, and the idea of predictable lead generation is very important when it
Mm.
comes to having the analogy that I always like to use is a faucet where you kind of turn it on, turn it off, get more, get less whenever you need it. When you think about implementing that in your business, is there anything that you're planning on doing to bring more consistency and predictability?
I think consistency and predictability is the holy grail for coaches and clients. And to say that I've been successful in that would be a bit of an overreach. So that's something I think all coaches struggle with, and it's certainly something that we've struggled with as well. The industry that we're in is very crowded with a lot of different messages.
Yeah.
And what we've found is that if I can spend 10 minutes talking with somebody, which is a long time, frankly, it's not elevator pitch long, but when we can explain that we're really trying to bring the principles of mental health into businesses, they'll get past their initial sort of, oh, that's not me. Like, no one, we don't talk about that's somebody else's problem. In fact, I talked with an executive who said, I refer all of that to my medical officer. In other words, and she was an HR leader, and in other words, no one wants to talk about it. But when we start to break it down, everyone recognizes, oh, that could be really beneficial for them. No one recognizes the impact that mental health has on themselves. And so it's particularly challenging to have really consistent lead and really consistent interest in what to trying to do. I haven't found the right messaging and the right approach yet. I'm still working on it.
Fair
Which I
enough.
guess is why we're talking, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I respect that. Walk me through the sales process. So you mentioned if you have a conversation that's 10 plus minutes, it can lead to something effective. Walk me through once a lead does come in, what are the different steps that you take them through for them to become a client?
What we like to do. So first off, having the initial conversation is critical. And so if we can have a conversation that starts to really unpack what's really happening in their organization and with themselves personally, and that can't be a superficial conversation. It usually involves, asking some probing questions like how are things actually working? How are you actually feeling about work? How are you actually showing up? And my wife is really the expert at that. She's got the therapist vibe. And so when people trust her immensely. And so when I can explain the business context behind all of it and there's a business, blah, blah, blah. But when she steps in and says, and dot, 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 people really listen. So once are engaged with the concept of what we do, we will spend time with them understanding what's really happening. And that usually involves it's quite extensive, but it usually involves doing interviews and talking with people. So our sales cycle tends to be a bit longer because we spend a lot of time and a lot of value to our potential clients just assessing what's really happening. And you spend 10 minutes talking with employees of bosses, and you're going to understand very clearly what the challenges are. And so that's what we do. We talk with employees on the team, we talk with the organization, and it's usually 8 to 10 people, depending on how large the team is. And that allows us to then be very clear about what needs to happen inside the organization and can approach with a very clear proposal. And
Oh
um,
wow.
it,
So you do this before they
yes, yeah, we do that before. And that almost guarantees that when I come in to say, okay, here's our proposal and here's exactly what the problem is, then we have a very dialed in proposal rather than just saying, I think you need this, or I think, no, or here's my standard path. If we put that out there in front of people, like, oh, okay. But if we say, here's exactly what's happening in your group, and they feel it, they know it, they understand, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Yeah, you've got it nailed on the head. Oh, would love for you to be able to do this too. So that allows us to say, okay, here's the proposal, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's how for how long. Yeah.
got it. Very, very interesting. Very interesting approach. So do you at that point it sounds like you're just diagnosing, you're not really prescribing anything.
Yeah, the diagnosis part is pretty critical, and that's the way it should be for pretty much at least any coaches that we've worked with or any coach in general is kind of got what you're aiming for before you start shooting.
Yeah.
And I've worked with coaches who, after a brief, oh, I can help you, a brief conversation will say, oh, I can help you out, and then haven't done any of the deep diagnosis, and so they can't. And that's where I think a lot of coaches really miss, particularly in this space, is they don't do enough diagnosis to really understand what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long does a typical sales cycle last?
It depends on on the size of the organization we're working with, but it can take anywhere from conversation to close a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were gonna say longer, to be honest. So
No, we try to get in pretty quickly and start working with people when we're having conversations and
yeah,
trying to dial in. So it doesn't take as long as it could if we
yeah,
can get on schedules. Yeah.
yeah. Walk me through your vision. So if you were to think over the next 6 to 12 months where you want to take the company, what specific revenue targets, performance targets, or just goals in general that you're aiming for?
Yeah, so right now it's currently my wife and I who are doing this, and we're doing this as it's almost become a passion project more than it's become a viable business at this point. But our goal is to level one, we need to get a level of sustainable revenue. But our vision is to grow the company where we can bring in additional help, additional coaches. We want to be able to bridge the gap between the mental health community and businesses. And most businesses just throw mental health out as, hey, here's a benefit, and don't recognize that mental health actually can be an integral part of their business. And so our goal is to bring in, evangelize that message with additional coaches and to
Mhm.
therapists who can act as coaches to work with more businesses. So I'd like to see that happen over the next 12 months, but that of course requires a sustainable process and, like you said, predictable income and predictable leads and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
100%. What do you feel like is the biggest challenge? Is it just the messaging? Is it conversion? Is it none of the above, all of the above? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's two components of it. Messaging is clearly something that's very challenging anytime you talk about mental health, people shut down.
Yeah.
And they shut down because no one is really emotionally well articulated or emotionally in I don't want to say intelligent because that's not true, but emotionally fluent. And
Mm,
so they don't recognize their own emotions or their own mental well-being, let alone the impact that their mental well-being may be having on others. No one likes to talk about that. And so that makes it very difficult to approach and say, hey, did you know that we do this? And people are usually like glass-eyed at first. So there's a messaging component that we've been working with, struggling with. And like I said, it usually takes us a few minutes before people start to, I see. A conversation I had 10 minutes into it after it's like, yeah, we work pretty well together. Yeah, we're pretty fine. And then after 10 minutes, man, we're totally dysfunctional. They start to really recognize what's happening. So
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
messaging component. It's a long message, which makes it difficult. Most people are looking for really snappy.
Mm,
And then a conversion element of it is obviously inside of businesses, budgets are tight. Do we really have the budgets to spend on bringing someone in who can talk about all this quote unquote fluffy stuff? So it presents
mm.
some significant challenges along those two avenues. As you aptly called out,
Yeah,
it's pretty clear.
that makes perfect sense. So figuring out a way to communicate it and craft the messaging in such a manner where people understand the urgency of doing something like this and also the positive ROI that can be yielded as a result.
Yeah.
That way they're
Yeah.
not pushing it off. Just use
hmm
my own words there.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair. That's an accurate description.
yeah. If you were talking to new entrepreneurs that are looking to start in 2020, they're looking to
hmm
start some sort of coaching company. Let's say they have a network, maybe they can get a couple clients, but they really want to take things to the next level. I'm
hmm
curious what advice you would have for them. And you can tailor this advice specifically to making sure that they are doing the things that they need to do to grow the business, but also taking care of their mental health and their emotional well-being.
Yeah. So that's a great sort of intersection of where we work. So I came out of the just speaking very candidly. I know I've risen pretty quickly through the ranks of automotive. I've got business chops. I can do this, and it's very different than doing a corporate gig.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of, and I was certainly naive to that. And I thought that I've done my business degrees and I've studied some of the stuff, right? Very different to actually execute at the ground level. So, what I would encourage for all coaches or anyone else that's considering coaching is do your homework to understand what it's really going to take to position yourself as the go-to expert and fill the pipeline. Because that's very different than just saying, "Hey, I want to go out and help people," what I naively did. And so I think the message that we're trying to bring out there is valued and valuable, but actually how to do that and crafting that is very different than just saying, "Hey, I want to go out and help people." So be really, really clear as you're wanting to transition out of maybe corporate into a more coaching role of what you really want to do, who you really want to help, and be much more specific on targeting than maybe you've been able to do. As you were working through your, as it were, your network, all the way be build, by the way, always be building your network. But as you go
Yeah.
through your network, make sure that you're getting really clear marketable testimonials from people saying, yeah, this person can really help because those are going to be gold. And that's one of the areas that it's very challenging to do when you're talking about people's mental health. No one wants to say, yeah, I was a basket case before I met Jared and Stacy, and now I'm great.
That's a good point.
You
Yeah, I
know,
definitely
no
thought
one,
about
no one really wants to acknowledge that
that.
and admit that, but that's really important for coaches to do. Now, and in terms of what I would stress to anybody, founders, coaches, anybody that's trying to start and establish a business, you have to recognize that there's a lever out there that nobody pulls, and that is your mental health. No one pulls that lever because we function and we read the books about how to charge forward and be a hard charge and a sales closer and all of these things. But we never recognize that underneath all of that is our mental health. And so many founders ignore that, and so many founders burn out and they burn their teams out and they destroy relationships because they don't recognize the stress of the business and the things that impact their mental health really do impact the bottom line. So I would highly recommend anyone that's going into either leadership or founding a company or anything like that, take the necessary time to research what gets your batteries recharged, how you interact with people, and the crap that you're bringing to the table that affects how you look at everything and everybody. No one looks at that stuff. And when you start to see it, then you start to see, oh, this is why I'm stuck in this area. Oh, this is what's happening to my team when they all sit down in the room and no one says anything. It's not because they're incompetent. It's because I'm being a total jerk of a boss. And when you start to look at those things, then you're starting to pull a lever that impacts profitability 20 to 30% by the research. And those are huge numbers, big, big numbers. So
I
that's,
love it.
yeah.
What recharges your batteries?
I love seeing transformation in people.
Mm,
That's what recharges my batteries. When I can see somebody get a light bulb moment that says, oh, crap, I didn't realize I was doing that. And when they do that and change and create sustainable, lasting transformation, that's a paycheck for me. That's huge.
love that. So on that note, what is the best way for people to reach out to you to work with you?
The best way is honestly on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I get a lot of connection requests, a lot of folks looking to help me. Sometimes I don't always need that help, but connect with me on LinkedIn. You shoot me a message, I'll always respond. And that's the best way to do it. You can find us on the web, kintsugi.institute. That's a little bit hard to pronounce, and look us up. We'd love to chat with you and would love to see how we can help you pull the levers of mental health in your business to unlock the profit that comes with stronger performing teams, stronger, but really at the foundational level that transforms lives rather than just add a dollar to the bottom line.
Awesome. Jared, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Anytime. So that wraps up another insightful episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, connect with Jared on LinkedIn. It's very easy to find. We'll also link it somewhere around here, so it'll be very easy to find. Also, make sure you subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you are a business owner and you're looking to scale your business and really enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to discover how we can support your growth journey. Until then, keep on climbing.